Okay, let's catch up with all that's happened in the past few days. So firstly, the Winnie May update is cowling halves together. It's a bit of an oval shaped cowling, which is slightly odd. I did quite a nice job on that and used minimal filler to get a very nice that's been sanded and polished, and when I say polished I mean with sort of 1200 sandpaper. The engine fit, and I think one of you may have mentioned this a little while back. On the inside, you won't see it now. Well, you can just see that little white bit there. There's what they have molded in as engine mounting holes, which were very badly done and forced the cowlings further apart than they should be, and I had to sit and grind those out and make it so that the engine can go in without those being there. It's a very basic engine, but anyway, now the cowlings are together. Fuselage windows in, halves together and sanded and filled. Quite a lot of sanding and quite a lot of force to get that to stay together. Now this whole bit of filling there was my mess up right in the beginning when I cut the tail cone off, and that was a huge amount of work, probably as much time to get that back to normal as to glue the entire fuselage. Those two are sink marks, as is that. So we know that the windows are far more recessed than they should be, but tough luck. It looks okay when you look from a distance. And I did decide, one of you did make the suggestion about changing the interior to not be black, but I sort of like that high contrast, so that when you view this, and it'll obviously be a white aeroplane with blue, I quite like that contrast, which in a way sort of works for me. Maybe it's because you focus so much on the fact that you've got those dark windows that you don't actually notice that they're recessed. But anyway, a lot of work to get to this point. No more steps. A lot of sanding, which is the part about the older aircraft building that really puts me off. But anyway, this is not the worst. So this is all that's left. Pilot won't go in, and as I said, the prop was lost in what got damaged. I've grabbed this Mustang prop, and I think it's a Mustang prop, and I'm going to, well, I think I grabbed two. This might be the other one. I think I've got one inside, which is a bit better, and I'm going to just reshape two of the blades, cut two of the blades off, reshape the hub a little bit, and it'll get its prop back on rather than have no prop. It's not the prettiest of props that it uses, but it'll be okay. And then, so you just need to be a little bit careful when you glue this piece on, because it can actually, it doesn't have one single fixed seated position in there. Those little ridges on which it rests does allow it to change. So I just need to make sure that when I glue it, it is totally flush there. Horizontal stabilizers will then be pretty easy to get on, and I just need to make sure, now keep in mind this was the mess up that I'd made, cutting that in half. They must be perfectly 90 degrees. And that means that my main wings have to be perfectly 90 degrees. And that's one of the last big hassles. But luckily, I just want to show you, the wing doesn't actually mount flush. It's got these two little ridge lines. They would sort of, on the real aircraft, they might form the correct angle of incidence to the fuselage. So with a very slight amount of trimming, you can actually adjust, if you needed to, a slight down tilt or up, well, not up tilt, down tilt on the one side or down tilt on the other side. So right now, it's a little bit difficult to judge right at this point, especially if you consider ignoring that. I'm going to have to do measurements and judge it according to the tail, but sometimes the tails are a couple of degrees or one or 2 degrees off. Anyway, I just need to make sure that that is perfect and that the canopy then... Now you can't get the canopy in afterwards. That's a little bit of the tricky thing here. So canopy has to be on. The wings have to be able to slot onto that and slot down onto that. So it sort of has to be built together. But at the same time, I need to be able to mask all of that first. Mask all of that framing. Glue that on, get that in, and then be ready for painting. Now I would, except for that aspect, and if I decide to, I can actually take that little mounting lug off. This aircraft would be ideal to paint the wing and fuselage separately, so I will give that a little bit of a thought. And there's very little left. There's a few undercarriage struts and the wheels. So yeah, we're getting there. And then we have the trial of the decals. Next we have this, which has given me endless trouble in the last few days. And my statements about building this in 2 days, well, what a joke that was. Not 4 either, and maybe 6. But it is turning into what I have to say could be what I'm going to say is the worst FX kit ever. And of course that's not actually true, it's just how I'm feeling right now. It is an aged kit. It's not as old as some of the old FX kits which I built, but this, I've had zero pleasure in this, except that it's a very nice looking aircraft. That's the only good thing about this. But it reminded me of why I had the kit previously and parted with it. So my absolute biggest recommendation if you're going to do a Vulcan is don't do the old one. To anyone that built the old one well, high five, congrats to you, because I think this is a terrible kit. So I have, with great trouble, managed to get a quite nice joint there and on the other side, as well as it allows to also get a smooth joint there. So their molding has not allowed to fit these two together such that you get a perfect joint. So their filler is required, and on this side filler is required. Let's see if I can just get a better... Maybe you see the shadow effect there. So it's very good, but it needs filler. And that's where the good ends. I did a lot of work to try and get this right, and I've just glued the one side, and terrible. I sat for one whole night just trying to hold one joint together to try and get that good, and you'll see if I... there was one angle I held it where you could see the polish lines there. So that's after me sitting polishing it with the back of sandpaper. So that's very nice and smooth, and they're not this one is a whole lot better than that one, which has got a bit of gap in there, and I'm not going to bother filling that. I'm rather annoyed with everything about this aircraft, and it even extends to this. So another recommendation, if you're building the old one, don't glue the vertical stabilizer halves together, because what you're actually going to want to do is to take your flat file and on the joint surfaces, not on the outside obviously, you're going to want to file that down so that you reduce the overall thickness of this fin over here, because it doesn't get in here. I've already scraped off. You see those? You see that mark there, right on that box structure there, which slots in here, and it's still not getting in. I need to force it so much, and it gets about 90% of the way. So I still need to sit with a knife and scrape away a lot. Save yourself a lot of trouble if you ever build this one by just filing this and reducing the thickness of this fin by up to 0.5 millimeter. That there needs gluing and sitting with pressure as you do it. So this is not glued yet, so that you get a nice round that side, and do one section at a time, and then force that to get a nice round, because at the moment the way they sit, it's pretty awful. So this would be an example of a kit which I from a main manufacturer that I don't enjoy anything about it. It's only that the Avro Vulcan looks cool. I'll hang this up here in our view once we're finished, so that we can actually see it. Yeah, I'll have to hang it maybe on this rope here, a little bit down there. So we'll get it finished. I mean, it'll look nice, but as a build, really not good. So I would not mind building the new one, but I'm not in any rush to do so. Oh, one whole night just to get that Bombay, and one of you did say that there's no mounting, there's nothing to help you there. It doesn't even meet on an equally flat surface, so that you could overlay a bit of flat plastic card and just sort of seat it. Doesn't even allow you that, so I had to sit with lots of bits of stretched sprue, just sprue, cut sprue, and gradually glue it in and try and get it to seat itself, which I managed to do, but it's not the prettiest. Including these sections there, managed to get those in okay. That looked a lot better. But I think this will go down as my lowest recommendation ever as a kit, and yet being a very good looking aircraft. So I just want to get this thing through. However, I will say the benefit in having done this is the lessons learned for very large surface gluing. This B1, which I will speak about next, which is sort of the lessons that I've been wanting to learn, doesn't have a tenth of what that Vulcan has. So it doesn't have any wing joint gluing, whereas the Vulcan has, massive wing joint lines, top and bottom surface to align, the waviness of the line. This has got nothing because it's a swing wing. So that little section, as I did say, is really not a problem, and I mean you could even start with that, but it's not necessary. When I get to this, I will talk through more of it, but the lesson learned is do very small section at a time. On the Vulcan, I did actually glue both sides at the same time, despite me saying I wouldn't, but I did sit there giving it pressure. I actually sat sticking something through there, so I could sort of get something through there and push against each side to push it out a little bit. So the only reason I'm going to fill this area is just because the nose is quite a lot more in your view than anything else, and on the upper surface I tried to get it so that no filling would be necessary, but I'm not doing anything on that undersurface. I'll still put those undercarriage doors on. So the Vulcan, just by its very design of the kit and the aircraft, just is 10 times more difficult than the B1. So I'm actually rather looking forward to getting to this B1. I did do the tail cone. So you can see, done that perfectly, didn't need filler there. A couple of little, they weren't sink marks, but slight little places that needed a bit of filler. But then despite this part being perfectly aligned, the moldings did have a recess on there. So you know, these slightly older kits, they don't have, you just can't have everything perfect on those joints, but not bad. I'm pretty happy with that. That's a good sign for the whole model. This does, however, also have that recess for the fin, which means I am going to have to check that when I put the two halves of the fin together, they actually get into there. Otherwise I am going to have to thin that down a little bit. So I'll be doing this cockpit, very simple cockpit, and doing the wing half joins. This has got very robust wing pivots. So the lessons learned for this will pay off on the B1, and we should get a very, very good B1 model. I will do this in the white color scheme with those faded British markings, which will look quite nice. And then we'll find a spot for it to hang somewhere close in the view, serve some purpose for the rest of its life. That's that one. B1 tail versus Vulcan tail cone. And then a little update on one of the aircraft that'll be coming up very soon, as I have said. So this is just test fitting the wings and the horizontal stabilizer onto the fuselage. This is just dry test fit, just to see what happens. So you can see that angle there, the natural angle seems to be a little bit too much up. So when you glue that already give you an idea that it's going to have this tendency to pull upwards. I'll work that a little bit. Main wing looks to have a pretty good fit there. You can see there's no gap there. It's a very nice flat fit. It is well seated in there. How much movement does it have? It has that much. So that's a good joint. It allows me just enough movement to get a very, very good symmetrical wing. And I'll just need to check if this has any dihedral. I'll have to look at some 3-view diagrams and just make sure. And same with the other side. Just make sure that I do have, it's a little bit difficult to see with this clear plastic, but I think this side's wing has got a little bit of a gap, which I just need to check. The symmetry, so this has got more down movement. No, it does. No, it has got enough of both. So you do need to be careful as it's being glued and drying, that you do end up with a very nice wing joint. Now with this type of joint, even if you've glued it and for some reason it's not up to the perfection that you were looking for at the time, after an hour or so or half an hour you can still budge it and adjust it a little bit, but it does require, because it tends to pull back onto the glue. It's sort of got a natural lowest stress position, so it's not ideal, but you can still get a small amount of budge going. That one's horizontal stabilizer looks really perfect. So it's the cockpit, which I still haven't got to do anything on that one, but I just wanted to get an idea now. Okay, I've just noticed something, and I don't know if this has got any fore aft movement. Yes, it does. So it actually, as I was showing it to you, it was sitting too far aft, and that tiny little bit of leading edge, sorry, right there on the fuselage must align with the leading edge of the wing. So don't go and mount it rearwards. Make sure that that's okay. This one's pretty tight. I can't get any budge going on that. It looks okay. There's a slight change of angle on that. But this is an aircraft which I will actually regard as one of the sort of, how can I put this, the very interesting aircraft on the display shelf. You almost never see anyone who's built one. You almost never see a kit of it. A very, very rare aircraft to see built anywhere. In fact, on that point, I've never seen, I don't think I've ever seen a Vulcan on a table anywhere. That may be because a lot of people that start this Vulcan model, the old one, don't finish it adequately or just give up on it, as I would love to do with this one. The new Vulcan is probably 100 times better. If you've built the new Vulcan, or if you have it, be interested to hear some feedback on that one. So once I've got the cockpit in, oh, there's a couple of bulkheads to be glued in. Now that does pose a slight bit of problem for one reason only, and I'm not 100% sure why there are bulkheads there. Give me your opinion as to why there are bulkheads there. And the reason I'm going to say that I would ponder not having them present is because as I'm gluing these halves, and as I'm focusing only on one half, and probably getting it nicely aligned, maybe even just starting with gluing just that one section there, making sure that it's absolutely perfect, sand it down a little bit, give it time to dry, move on, move on, move on, move on. On the first side, not too bad, because you haven't glued the other side yet. But when you eventually get to the other side, any bulkhead that's on the inside there, which is there and there, well, that's, that cockpit backing bulkhead. If it's holding this section too narrow, that might not give you the force that you need to adjust. And in fact, I can actually feel that the top half is narrower, so at the least I need to ensure that that bulkhead forces this part open rather than requiring pressure to hold it closed. Otherwise you've just ruined this whole section here. It will have a step which you need to take off. Now there's no bulkheads right within that main part. The next one is right about there, which means this is the area which you would then need to ensure you don't have and in fact I can tell already as I'm holding it. Let me just get this onto the pins, and I think I will take off all of those pins. The lower half, even though one shouldn't judge it just from the molding straight up, because I'll explain that one now. The top section, I can feel there's a step on both sides. So this upper section here is wider than the lower section. So again, if you put that bulkhead in and it forces it open, well, not that this one has the angle to force it open, but it may stop you from giving the pressure to squeeze this in a little bit to to join perfectly. The reason why I say don't judge it that much just on the way the molding is right now, and that was true of this as well, that their molding, as you get to the edge of this molding piece there, it doesn't always end in the perfect airframe. It's almost has a little bit of a lip right on the end. I mean tiny, but this one is actually, yeah, there is a little bit over there, certainly more this side. So you almost need to sand that at about 90 degrees with, I don't know, about 400 sandpaper. Get rid of that. Sand this. This one's certainly got more. This one's almost visible. I don't know if you can actually see that. So there's quite a clear little bit of a plastic lip over here. Don't know if you can see that there. And you can't have that present at the time of gluing, because you can't judge that you're getting the two perfect, you know, that you're getting that surface matching perfectly. So I'm going to have to sit and sand that down to a nice flat, and that side. You see that? Because all of that I'm talking about now is to try and get those short sections, when I glue them, to try and get them so that after they dry and you sand them a little bit, they are perfect and require hopefully zero filler, and you've got as good a joint as possible. The slight danger around the back area, and that is a little bit, oh yes, sorry, I didn't mention that. I'll show you how that's true on this. Okay, the height of the half of the outlets on top and lower surface does not match well on that side. Now that's probably more to do with the wing gluing that someone did before. This side is better, so you see that it's not perfect, but that side is a whole lot better, so that when I glue that, you've got a flat circle, and this side won't. Actually, another thing I didn't point out is, do you see that there? Very bad step there. So that I've made sure that I glued that to give a very smooth joint there. So that means all of this here is, you know, there was no choice in that, which means that bad fit there is their moldings. This side is better. So the danger is that, and I don't think that there's any solution to that. The danger of that is that when you've glued all of this together, making sure that you match up key points like getting those perfectly aligned, getting that perfectly aligned. And of course, with a long thing like this, you know, you can inadvertently put a bit of flex on it, though it's unlikely. But that when you get to the tail, you could end up with that happening. You're not ending up with a flat surface. So you need to just be aware, and even these bits here, that having done that all perfectly, that is still in question. One can start in reverse. One can do the smaller rear section first. Make sure that you've got that glued well, this glued well, and then you're left with getting these sections right. Now, I've got that on the pins there, and that is not aligned well there. Okay, this side shows up the design better. I've got a feeling one of the sides of this has got a slight problem with that molding. So you need to just have a very nice curvature on there as you're gluing that. Which way would be better? Gluing the rear section first and knowing that that's taken care of, and then starting from the front and moving rearwards up to there, or doing this whole front section and then trying to take care of anything in the rear. I'll give that a bit of thought. That is on the assumption that the moldings are perfectly equal sized. The one possibility is that if you do the rear, you can then also put on the tail cone to give it that extra strength and extra rigidity there, keeping those pieces together. But if you glue this well, you know, it's not a stress area. The wings are going to be a little bit annoying being in the way and hanging all over the place while you're trying to glue and sand, but that'll be, just have to deal with that. Give your thoughts on what you think is better. Gluing rear section first, in which case the parts actually, you know, they stay together in a very nice manner. Just tape the front up, do the rear section very nicely, and then come back to the front, versus doing the front and then getting to the rear. I'm almost tempted to say I'd like to do the rear first. Give me your thoughts on that one. I could cut this whole thing out. Making it easier for me to mount the closed doors. Because while I'll do undercarriage down, I don't want this open. I'll just check the fit of that. I don't have that part here right now. Okay, let's cut it off there. That's a bit of a long video. I'll do another one shortly. Cheers.